So we have been talking about the church is the people of God. But it's not the people of God just sitting or coming into a building. It's the people of God who are going to make disciples. And so we've been describing it this way. The church is the people of God who are obedient to Matthew 28:18-20. So these disciples, these followers of Jesus, they go, they make disciples, they teach them to obey, starting with baptism. They gather them together, and then they send them out to go and make more disciples. So what happens when disciples are making disciples in obedience to Matthew 28? What happens is multiplication. It's very powerful. This idea of multiplication is very powerful. It's different than addition. 1 plus 1 is 2, add 1 is 3, add 1 is 4. That's addition. Multiplication is far more powerful. 2 become 4, then 8, then 16, then 32, because every disciple that is being discipled goes and makes more disciples. So there is multiplication. Now, multiplication, this is God's plan for filling the earth with the glory of the knowledge of His will. Multiplication. It's how God fills the earth with everything, even in natural things. In fact, do you remember God's very first command ever given was given to Adam and Eve? And He said to them, go and multiply, go and be fruitful, go and reproduce, go and multiply. Because that's God's plan for how He fills the earth. Now with Adam and Eve, He was filling the earth with people. And so He started with 2 people. He told them to go and multiply. And what happened after hundreds and hundreds of years? 2 people. It now became 8 billion people. That's the way the world gets filled with people, is that 2 reproduce. And now there's 2 more. They reproduce. There's 8, there's 16, there's 32. That is the power of multiplication, and we see it everywhere. When you look and see trees everywhere that God planted, those seeds are dropping, those trees are dropping seeds. And every seed is then reproducing more trees. And then those trees are dropping more seeds that are reproducing more. And so soon you have whole fields full of trees, forests filled with trees, nations filled with trees, because they are multiplying. This is God's command, and it's how He reproduces and fills the earth with Himself. Now in Mark chapter 4, Jesus tells us that this is also how the kingdom will spread. He says the kingdom of God is like seed that is being scattered on the ground. And He says, some of the ground has problems. Some of the ground is hard. Some of the ground has thorns in it. But He says there is also seed that is being scattered on some good soil. Now, in Mark chapter 4, what happens when that good seed of the kingdom is planted in good soil? It says that a harvest comes forth 30-fold, 60-fold, or 100-fold. Why? Because even a single disciple can reproduce 30-fold, or 60, or 100. Now, He's talking again about the power of multiplication. What happens if one disciple goes out and maybe over some time makes 30 disciples? That's good. It may take some time, but it's possible for one disciple to go out and make 30 good disciples. Now, what happens if those 30 good disciples, each one of them makes 30 good disciples? So you have 30 disciples, but each one makes 30. Now, how many disciples do you have? 900. 900 disciples, and that's only the second generation of disciple making. As we talk about multiplication and disciple making movements, it's easy for us to talk about and learn how to see movements that go to the second generation and then the third generation and then the fourth generation and even beyond. So that's the power of multiplication. If a disciple is fruitful and makes 30 good disciples, and each of those 30 good disciples make 30 each, then there are 900 disciples. That's a big group. And that's just the beginning. What if all of those 900 disciples make 30 more each? If 900 make 30 more each, now you're up to like over 20,000 disciples. It's amazing the power of multiplication. And so we see this principle as Jesus teaches us. This is how the kingdom of God can spread from even one disciple to fill the earth with the glory of God. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples of multiplication. One example has to do with elephants and rabbits. You see, elephants and rabbits are very different. That's obvious. Elephants are very big. Rabbits are very small. But there's another difference. It takes a long time to reproduce an elephant. It takes a long time to reproduce an elephant. But it takes only a short time to reproduce a rabbit. So elephants. Now, an elephant has to be alive for 18 years before it is even ready to reproduce. And then when two elephants come together, and there is an elephant produced, they only produce one. Whereas rabbits sometimes produce 6 or 7 rabbits at one time. Now, elephants, they're going to be pregnant for a long time. In fact, a pregnant elephant remains pregnant for almost 2 years. That's a very long pregnancy. And if you're a woman, I hope you don't have to wait that long for a pregnancy. But an elephant has to be pregnant for almost 2 years. And it does not have babies very often. So if you start with 2 elephants, and you wait 3 years, you can have 3 elephants, right? If you have 2 elephants and one of them becomes fertile and then gets pregnant, and they're pregnant for almost 2 years. So at the end of 3 years, you can have 3 elephants. Now, rabbits, of course, are different. They become ready to have babies in only 4 months. That's all it takes. And as I said, when they have babies, they have 6 or 7 at one time. And they're only pregnant for 1 month. And so they are continually popping out new babies who are growing up and having more babies, who are growing up and having more babies, and they multiply in this way very, very quickly. So how many rabbits will you have in 3 years if they keep reproducing in this way, if they keep multiplying? Remember we said that an elephant, after 3 years, we will have 2 elephants will become 3. Now that's good. Elephants are big, so we go from 2 to 3. But rabbits keep reproducing and then multiplying. And so if you give 2 rabbits 3 years and they keep reproducing this way, in 3 years you can have over 400 million rabbits. That's a lot of rabbits. And so maybe you see the illustration here. Sometimes people look at the church of the building sort of like an elephant church, like an elephant. It's big, it can reproduce, but it's going to reproduce very slow. It's hard to see that thing with the building and all the money reproduce fast. It's going to reproduce very slowly over time. But the rabbit church, these are the people of God who are just gathering in homes, going and making disciples, reaching others, gathering in more homes. They keep reproducing and reproducing and reproducing. And so they're like the rabbit. After 3 years, there can be 400 million rabbits. That is the power of multiplication. And so as we follow this plan that Jesus gave us in Matthew 28, where we go, where we make disciples and teach them to obey and baptize them and gather them and then send them out to go, we are following this plan of multiplication that is so very, very powerful. Now in this video, I'm going to give you one more illustration of the power of multiplication because I want us to really catch the vision that as we are obedient to Jesus, out of us can come reproducing more disciples and reproducing more disciples who reproduce more. We can become this multiplication power and see the gospel reach so many people. And that's my prayer for you. That's my prayer for the church. That's my prayer for us. We are God's people filled with the Spirit, meant to reach so many people through the power of disciple-making movements, which is this power of multiplication.